Parrot TV,
Hello,
Voice for Humanity.
hello, and welcome. This is Parrot TV. This is the politics, and I'm your host, Sainabou. Baldeh. Thank you so much for joining us every Friday. We normally have a show at 12 p.m., but today we have a special for you at 1 p.m. with Mrs. Verena Powell. So she will be giving herself a brief introduction. But we'd like to remind you guys, don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube page, on Parrot TV, Instagram on Parrot TV, and on Facebook on Parrot TV. Anything you want to know about New York politics, the Bronx, the trending topics, this is where to come every Friday at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We always have you the best news and always a good time. Ms. Verena Powell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
Welcome.
inviting me. Thank you very much.
So we find out you're running for civil court. She's a candidate for civil court right now. And would you mind giving us a brief introduction about who you are so that our audience get a better view of who you are? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Verena Powell. I'm one of 5 candidates who is running for 2 seats in the 2nd Municipal District here in Bronx County. Most people are not familiar with the judicial districts. There's a county-wide, which basically is that, which is county-wide. And then there's also the 1st Municipal District, which is the eastern half of the Bronx, and the 2nd Municipal District, which is the western half of the Bronx. Pretty much the area west of Webster Avenue, or in some parts of the borough, west of the Bronx River, comprises the 2nd Municipal District. It runs all the way from Riverdale at the north to Mott Haven at the south, okay? I'm going to say I have been in New York since 1987. I came here after I finished law school at Boston University. And I worked in a law firm in Midtown Manhattan. After that point in time, I became an assistant DA in Bronx County, where I worked for a period of 9.5 years and basically attained the status of homicide mob by the time I left the office. And by homicide mob, that basically means I tried homicide cases as well as individuals who fell under the Major Offense Bureau, such as predicate felons, conspiracy matters, and the like. After my tenure in the Bronx District Attorney's Office, I went into private practice as a solo practitioner. I worked throughout the courts of New York City, as well as some courts in Long Island and upstate, and I did everything from criminal defense to some family court matters to some civil court matters, and I even basically served as a hearing officer with Health and Hospitals Corporation. The job that I had before I was a DA was for a law firm that did labor and employment law. So based on my experience in labor and employment law, I was in a position to serve as a step 2 grievance officer for health and hospitals. Okay. Now, after that point in time, approximately in August of 2019, I took a new position with the City of New York, working for the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, where I work with the attorneys of the Assigned Counsel Plan. The Assigned Counsel Plan, commonly referred to as 18B, are the attorneys who are assigned by the courts to represent individuals in criminal matters when they do not have the resources to represent themselves, or they cannot be represented by one of the other criminal defense institutions, such as legal aid or such as Bronx Defenders in this particular case. So that is my career up until this point in time.
An impressive career too. Yeah. So with our first question, why the change now? Why run for civil court?
Well, I've thought about this for a period of time. I have run before, to be honest with you, but I figure at this point in time in my career, I think I'm ready for it. Even though I ran before, I really still love trying cases. I love being before the jury. I love working with my clients individually to help them solve whatever their problems were. But with the position I had taken back in August of 2019, one thing they didn't tell me when I first took it is that I would no longer have a caseload. I could no longer try cases. That has to do with the structure of the mayor's office and the other agencies in the city, and the fact that all of us are technically co-workers. So I could not technically go against a co-worker. But at this point in my life, I know I have the experience. And I want to be in a position that should someone come into court and they look up on the bench, they see someone who looks like them, who has a vast knowledge of experience, as well as is willing to make decisions on cases based upon the facts and based upon the law and not based upon favoritism.
All right. So with that being said, what would you say it would be your perspective going in as a civil court candidate? What makes you different from everybody else?
Well, one, I have a depth of experience in here. As I mentioned before, I have the criminal experience. I also have civil experience, and working with Health and Hospitals Corporation, that's more the administrative law. So basically, I have experience there too. Obviously, as a junior assistant or a junior associate in a law firm, I know what it's like to be so-called worker, and also in my position with homicide mob, as well as in my current position now, I know what it's like to be a supervisor and work with other individuals and try to resolve matters and issues both within the organization as well as without the organization. I know that I have the ability to write. I believe I display good judicial temperament, and I know I would be fair and impartial if I sat on the bench.
We hear that often. We've had other candidates come in here, such as Ms. Yahid, and we talk about what works for them, what made them feel like this, outside of the fact that you've had the experience, outside of the fact that you want to be there to just do what is righteous for the community. Is there something deeper rooted that inspired you to be like, you know what, this is the path for me, and I need to do this because I need to see more people like me? Or was it more personal?
Well, my family was fortunate that I didn't really have any type of interaction with attorneys growing up. I know, like other individuals who had different life experiences, either their family had reason to go to housing court, or they knew someone who had been arrested or charged with a crime. I didn't have that experience. Honestly, I first thought about becoming an attorney like when I was a junior in high school. That much I definitely knew, because actually in preparing for this interview, like you're going back, it's like, what exactly was the impetus for you to decide to do this? And I remember growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, there was one time, I lived in St. Louis County, which is a separate legal entity from St. Louis City. And St. Louis County is kind of like Westchester, in that it's made up of small cities, towns, and villages. And most of the individual cities, towns, and villages at that point in time, you had your own law enforcement. So I don't know what had happened, because fortunately I didn't do anything to get into trouble growing up, but an officer had stopped me. And I know by the time I had finished, I was like, well, I'm going to take care of stuff like this. And when I'm grown, I'm going to be becoming an attorney and all this other stuff. And he kind of like looked and laughed at me. He's like, and I'm quite sure you will. So that's the first time I really thought about the law as a profession. Something I can't say, obviously if I get onto the bench, I'm going to represent women. I'm going to obviously represent people of color. I'm going to obviously represent someone who was not native born to New York, So I think I represent a lot of the things many of the residents of Bronx County also represent, the fact that they are considered outsiders or other, for lack of a better term. I just know that this is right for me. I'm the type of person that if I don't apply for something, if I don't have the skills, if I don't have the ability, and if I don't have the love for it, and I know I have a love for the law. Now, mind you, the law is not perfect. The law is nowhere near perfect. I won't even go through just plain American history in reference to the law, but I think it's something that you can work towards perfection. And that's one of the things I want to do should I be selected by the electorate and have an opportunity to sit on the bench.
What do you have to say about, you spoke about just being basically saying, I'm there for the underdogs of the people that have been put to the side. So what do you have to say about systematic racism in the judicial system in the United States?
Okay. I can speak as an individual on that. I'm quite sure if Ms. Gonzalez-Taylor did not let you know, there are certain things we're not allowed to speak on. But obviously it's a problem in society. It's a problem in society everywhere. I think, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but earlier this year, or if it was late last year, a report came out from Albany. The chief judge had reached out to Mr. Jay Johnson to lead a commission which examined the courts and which examined the operation of the courts on all levels. And the report that came out was rather damning about what is in fact taking place in the courts, not just at the judicial level, but also interactions between judges and the public, interactions between court staff and the public. It basically, there are a lot of changes that need to be addressed. I do know from the report, as well as subsequent things that the chief judge has done, she is instituting programs and training to make sure that everyone is treated with respect in the courts. I mean, to me, that's a basic. You know, there is one book, I think it was entitled Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And I think to a certain degree, this is it. Basically, you know, not to put everything into your mouth, to sit down, to listen, and to treat other people as you want to be treated. But yes, I think there are things that need to be addressed across the board, you know, definitely across the board. You know.
Thank you. And she mentioned that. What are your specific, what's the specific agenda you have as a candidate for civil court? What is your agenda?
Well, I really don't know if I have an agenda per se. Again, the rules that we function under during the campaign are very limited. I'm allowed to talk about my past experience. I'm allowed to talk about the qualities which make me more than a unique candidate or uniquely qualified to serve on the, you know, to serve on the bench here. But I mean, I guess, do I have a pure agenda? The answer is no, other than that if I'm on the bench and if I'm in the courtroom, I'm going to treat people fairly. I know that may sound like, you know, plain whitewash and the like, but it does make a difference in how people are spoken to, how people are addressed. Me personally, I remember one time after the towers had gone down and I had had some health issues after that, I had gone to court for a client in Suffolk County. And even though I was dressed professional, based on the medical issue I had just had because of the towers going down, I didn't have on a suit. I think I may have had on slacks, I may have had on a blouse or something, but I wasn't in a traditional suit. And I had approached the rail in order to sign in and to speak with the assigned assistant on the case. And a court officer rushed up to me and literally, before I could pull out my attorney ID to prove that in fact I was an attorney and not a member of the public who was trying to go beyond a certain point in the courtroom, he had basically almost pushed me out of the courtroom. And once I got outside and everything, I was able to show him my ID and his personality changed. You know, it went from, you know, what are you doing? Get out of the way, get out of the courtroom, to him apologizing and saying, oh, Miss Powell, I'm sorry, I didn't know who you were. And that basically shouldn't happen to anyone. Basically, instead of like rushing me out of the courtroom, the first thing he should have said is, excuse me, are you an attorney? Are you a defendant? Are you related to a defendant? You know, to make a decision there. So obviously, one of the first things that's going to happen is in my courtroom, people are going to be treated with respect.
So what do you hope to achieve after 2 years if elected?
After 2 years if elected, okay, first of all, I love the courtroom. So I can still see myself in lower court. I know some people, they are saying, oh, like after 2 years, I want to be considered for Supreme Court, to be an acting Supreme, or seek election to the Supreme Court bench. If it happens, it happens. However, I think there is still justice to be done on the lower level. A lot of people think that lower court, whether it's lower civil court, a lower criminal court, is not that important. But the thing is, the things that happen in lower court also affect people's lives. And actually, they have a larger caseload, so you're affecting a larger portion of the population. Now, one thing that I do like that has taken place, and I can say this, I like most of the changes that have taken effect with, and this is more so in the criminal realm, dealing with the change in bail, with the change in discovery, and the change in speedy trial. Because unfortunately, there are many people who are in lower court, again, we're talking about the criminal aspect, who have been in jail days, weeks, months, and sometimes up to a year. And mind you, if someone is convicted of a misdemeanor, the most they could get would be a year in jail. So there's no reason to have someone sit in jail, possibly lose their job, possibly lose their home over something that can be resolved very quickly and in a, some type of expeditious manner. So I can still see me on the bench after 2 years in lower court, and I would have no problems with it. So as I said before, I don't see this as a stepping stone of getting any place else.
So basically, within the next 10 years, you won't want to be anywhere in the Supreme Court? Or move
within
on
the
from
next
there
10 years. But I think if I'm not mistaken, your original question was in the next 2 years.
Well, 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to the next 10 years to see where we're going to end at.
In the next 10 years, again, if it happens, it happens. Will I be bent out of shape if it doesn't? No, I wouldn't be bent out of shape, but I also do know my reputation for being a worker bee, so I know once I go in there, I'm going to do the job. And one good thing about my current job, and one thing I definitely like about the Bronx, no offense to any other county, is that the administrative judges there work well with the stakeholders. And the stakeholders include the district attorney's office and includes the defense organizations, including the assigned counsel plan. And what I truly love is we have weekly meetings and we try to address issues that we see or issues that we think may come up because of some type of change in policy, either change in policies of the courts, basically the OCA, which is the Office of Court Administration, or let's say a change in policy in reference to the district attorney's office. So anyway, so sorry.
Why should the civil court judge position be political, though?
I really don't. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Personally, I don't think it should be. We're supposed to serve the people, for the good of the people. And I said this when I ran before. I think at this level, it should not. Okay, let's be honest. Even though this is New York City and you do have Republicans here, I think at this level, it's not important. Okay, actually, I think the election should be nonpartisan at this point in time. I think that's a better word because everything's always political. There's always politics in everything from what you eat, how you dress, what music you listen to. So everything is technically political. But I do think at this stage, it should be nonpartisan. I know there are different arguments when individuals are looking at placing someone on the federal bench because one, you're there for life. So you're going to have a lot of effects, not only immediately, but for from actually years and decades down the road. But I think at this level, it should not be partisan.
So with saying that, why does the election matter? Why not just selection based on qualification experience? I would believe that most people would believe if you have the qualification experience, that means you do a better job. That means you're more knowledgeable about the laws. And Ms. Powell, you have quite the experience. So what do you have to say about that?
Okay, thank you. One thing you're going to learn in life, and I don't mean to offend you when I say that you're young, you're going to find out, unfortunately, a lot of things are not a meritocracy. There's usually there are other elements involved. I think that's the nicest way of saying it. Here in New York City, in particular, there's different policies once you go out to Long Island and to upstate New York. You can technically apply to the mayor's office, and that's supposed to be merit-based. I'm not saying that it's not, but again, with everything else, there is literally politics in everything in life, okay? I would hope whether I ran and the public made the decision or whether I applied to the mayor's office, people would appreciate my experience. People would appreciate the fact that it's broad, civil as well as criminal, public as well as private sector. Solo practitioner, having worked in a corporate firm, having worked for government. Hopefully those things would be considered.
How do you plan to basically kind of have more people understand the civil court? because I know as a community, a lot of people, especially in the Bronx, they have a high crime rate, and so you have a lot more to deal with. So with that being said, how can your being in a courtroom affect change in the community outside of the courtroom?
Well, one of the things I did, I haven't been as active lately, but I've been active in a number of bar associations since coming to New York. Actually, I was active when I was in law school and little stuff that happened there too. But one of the things we did in the different bar associations is we have outreach to the community, and everything from how to deal with stop and frisk, especially since a number of us were former prosecutors or are now defense attorneys. We would have panels with prosecutors, defense attorneys. If we found someone in law enforcement who's willing to come down to speak, and have them too, and talk to the public, talk to the young people about what the police can and cannot do. Again, that's on the criminal side because the majority of my career had been there. On the civil side, you can do the same thing. Because one of the programs, I've only had a chance to do it for 1 year because then I end up getting my current position and there are more restrictions on me, is the Palante group. Palante is based in Harlem, but if I'm not mistaken, they also have a Bronx branch, which deals with civil matters, primarily housing court. And it's the same thing. They have symposiums, they have speakers who come in who actually talk to the public. Now, that is one thing, even if I am elected to the bench, that I can still go back and do those type of things, and my attitude, the outreach should continue. Because honestly, before a girlfriend of mine had run for judge back in 1999 in Brooklyn, I didn't know the policies and the procedures of how a person became a judge here, and I'm an attorney. So if I didn't know, I'm quite sure the average lay person on the street didn't know. So my attitude is community outreach. I also do that like with my church, because I attend St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran here in Parkchester, and we have programs there of outreach. I mean, to me, it's easy because I can ask someone that I know to come in to speak. I mean, if I was able to do it then, I'll be able to do it in the future.
We had, again, I do remember I said this, we had attorney Yahid here before.
Gonzalez Taylor,
and she once said, civil court judges are more important to the masses than other public officer holders, like mayors and the president. Do you agree with this assertion, and why or why not?
I definitely agree with her. Actually, it's funny. Our careers somewhat parallel each other. She was in the DA's office after I left. Unfortunately, I'm older, but and also both of our mothers worked for the United States Postal Service. Her mom was a letter carrier, and my mother worked as a clerk. So we had a chance to meet after the first forum we were both invited to. But I definitely agree with her, because I know people, sometimes when you approach people in the street and you're telling you're running for public office, oh, what are you going to do for me? Why do I care about, about someone being a judge? But there's really 2 times where you have direct input in society. Okay, everybody thinks, oh, but when I vote for president, yeah, you do, but not really, because the Electoral College pretty much controls that. And I think if people did not know beforehand, they know after this last election. But basically, it's jury service and, well, to a certain degree, voting, but it's definitely jury service. And that's one thing I truly believe in. I believe that if you get that jury notice in the mail, respond to that jury notice and respond to jury duty, because that's when you have a direct say what is happening in your community and to people who are in your community. But whether it's civil court, housing court, family court, or criminal court, all of those courts, and as I said before, especially on the lower level, because they have a larger caseload, which means they're dealing with a larger percentage of the population. And those decisions are going to affect not only that individual, that family, but on a larger scale, that community. So yes, I'm actually in agreement with Ms. Gonzalez Taylor.
From that, would you say when it comes to judiciary, how can we best, like you did say earlier, the best way to get people more informed is by educating them more, by
Yes.
going to these forums and getting them in. And I know you have people that here that will get the mail, they'll get it in their mail to get into the court and be there, but for them it's almost a burden to do so. So how best outside of them going to forums, you know, there's a pandemic now, so some people still don't want to leave their homes, they don't feel safe enough. How do you reach those people? How do you get them to be like, you know what, I still want to do this because it's my responsibility as a United States citizen, and it's my responsibility as a Bronxite or as a New Yorker? How do you get them involved?
You know something, I know most people think that the pandemic has been horrible, and it has been horrible in reference to the loss of life. However, the fact that technology has had to catch up, and the average person has had to catch up with technology, is actually easier for people to sit in on meetings and sit in on symposiums, assuming they do have the bandwidth and that they have the equipment in order to log in. But even if a person doesn't have a computer or maybe a tablet, most individuals still have cell phones. So even though we had problems connecting today, that's probably like not the perfect example, but you know, a lot of the, I'm gonna just say younger people, whatever, you know, you can log in, you can see things. And I know actually a lot of the bar associations, even though in the beginning, like March, April, maybe May of last year, everything was quiet and things weren't happening because people were not sure how long it was going to last. After that point in time, it got to the point that individuals were out there, the bar associations were out there trying to do programs, since everything is virtual. But yes, I think that is one way of getting the information out to the masses. There's another thing. I mean, there's cute little videos, because actually, I can't remember where it came from or how I came across it, but it was something that was dealing with redlining. I cannot remember who produced it, but it was great. I mean, it was in Facebook and it went out to other people and it was entertaining. And that's one of the things that people have to consider. It was entertaining, but at the same time, you were basically infusing knowledge to your audience. Those are the type of things. And then finally, because as I said, I wasn't educated here. My husband was born and raised in New York. And before he had retired as a Supreme Court officer, he headed the court tours program for Bronx Supreme Court. Now, he did more than just do tours. He had adopter classes, and he had several across the area. In fact, his class was so well known, not only did he appear outside of the Bronx, they actually had someone had connections, and he ended up speaking to a group in New Jersey. The reason I'm mentioning this is civics is not really pushed in school like it used to be. And that's one thing that has to come back. You have to get civics back into the to the classroom.
Yes, that is very important. We did mention that before, talking about how in classrooms they don't talk about the important things that people really need to know about, because that is what affects their life the most. But in your career, what's the most challenging judiciary task in your career, and how did you sail through it? I know you had some.
You know, okay. Not that I have kids, but to a certain degree, it's kind of like childbirth. After you go through labor and then you have the child and everything else, you forget about it. I'm trying to think one that really like sticks out. You know, I guess one of those things I was kind of, okay, even though I guess I come from the Midwest and sometimes I can be all quiet and everything else. When I have a position, I'm going to let you know my position. There's one judge who had since passed, you know, and it was not a bad interaction, but still, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. If I was a prosecutor and think something should have happened, I was going to stand up then. I still did it as a defense attorney. And you have, I mean, over time, of course, you've had some judges who are like a little disrespectful because you're a woman, you know, because sometimes I don't know if someone is disrespectful is because I'm a woman or if I'm a person of color, or if it's a combination of the two. Sometimes you can't tell. Most people are not stupid enough to be very blatant and say, but nothing that has pretty much stopped me. Nothing at all that has stopped me. Nothing, you know, I just wasn't going to let it happen. Because when I was a prosecutor, you know, you feel like you own the courtroom. And honestly, as a defense attorney, I still think I feel like I own the courtroom. So, you know, that's just me. That's just me.
If you could go back,
Mhm.
and I know maybe when you were in high school, what would you like to say to your younger self, having seen yourself today and what you've accomplished as a woman and as a Black person in the judiciary system in the United States?
Okay. First of
What
all,
advice would you give yourself?
okay. First of all, I'm gonna do. Okay. First of all, I would tell myself I could have been a dance major and still going to law school would not have made a difference, because my majors in college was history and Black studies, which I still love and I have no problems with. But if I probably stuck with dance, I probably would be a little bit thinner than I am now. I think the other thing I would tell myself is have confidence in yourself. It may seem like it's overwhelming, but you can do it. You know, you're not the first, you're not going to be the last, but you can definitely do it. I think the other thing is like, you also got to learn, you need to record everything you've ever done in life. You find that out when it comes to applications. Because one of the things I did when I was with the Metropolitan Black Bar Association on their board of directors, I chaired their judicial screening program for 2 years. And basically what we did with the judicial committee was we had all of the affinity bar associations. So it was the Metropolitan Black Bar, the Association of Black Women Attorneys, there was the Asian Bar, there was the Puerto Rican Bar, there was the Dominican Bar Association, there was even the Gaelic Bar Association, there's the LGBTQ, which was Legal. All of us came together to make sure that different communities outside of just corporate America had access to the individuals who were applying to be judges, whether it was through the mayor's committee or trying to run for a position on the ballot, to make sure that they had access and the individuals who came before them were heard by everyone who was out there, as well as the fact that sometimes corporate America may not look at an attorney because they don't have the white shoe background or they didn't go to an Ivy League school. So you want to see a leveling of the playing field, to me, at all times. That's one of the things.
Thank you for that. We have a few minutes left. So do you have any last words? What would you like to say to the Bronxites that are hearing you now, watching you right now? Do you have any message for them?
Okay. You know, a friend of mine made me write down, she gave me a series of 6 questions. She's an attorney too. And she had wanted me to respond to them. And the first time I responded to them, you know, she told me I was being an attorney and not responding and not answering her question. So this is what I'll give you as parting words. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you as well as on Facebook Live. This is a first for me, you know, so of course I'm gonna have to tell my family later and they have to go back and find it. But the reason I want to become a judge is I do have a love of the law, not for what it is, an imperfect instrument, but for what it could be. And my decision to consider the bench did not come lightly. I don't consider this to be a career goal. I consider it, again, as I said before, I want people who come into court to know if they appear before me, they will be treated fairly, listened to without judgment, and that any decision rendered was done so upon the law and the facts and not favoritism. And then I found this quote, which I think is most appropriate. Socrates said, 4 things belong to a judge: to hear courteously, to answer wisely, to consider soberly, and to decide impartially. And I believe I have the ability to do those things.
I saw that as your slogan. I loved it. I saw
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you. The voters out here that are watching and here, hopefully they've learned something they didn't know about, or they seek more knowledge. And that's what we love to do here in Parrot TV, to kind of get people to know what is happening in their communities. Because again, the world is big and there's a lot going on, but sometimes the little things like just finding out what civil court there's gonna be is important, what they're capable of, what they're trying to do, and who they really are. So thank you so much for taking your time out of your day and joining us. I thank you, all of you, for viewing here. This is Parrot TV again. This is the politics. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and for your family, tell them it's on YouTube too. It's on the Parrot TV and on Instagram. and on Facebook. If they go to Parrot TV, they have you there, right?
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Verena Powell. My name is Sainabou Baldeh. Thank you for joining us again. We'll see you next week, Friday, at our usual time at 12 p.m. Today, we had a beautiful special with this amazing woman. So everybody enjoy your weekend. Stay blessed. Thank you so much.